Our fleet is prepared for the convergence. We must accept it, but ensure we're not to talk very much.
Everyone always imagines that first contact is loud. Sirens, explosions, weapons charging. For Rian Holt, it began with silence. The kind of silence that swallows your heartbeat and makes you realize, too late, that you are standing where you absolutely do not belong. The Interstellar Summit Chamber was a cathedral of glass and orbiting light, carved into the hull of the Axiom Spire, a diplomatic station drifting at the edge of mapped space. Delegations from dozens of species occupied tiered platforms, each platform customized to alien gravity, pressure, and atmosphere needs. Some sections glowed blue with ammonia mist. Others vibrated with subsonic chants you could feel in your bones. Rian wasn't supposed to be here. He was a junior human protocol runner, not a diplomat, not a negotiator. He delivered encrypted tablets, fetched translation cores, and tried desperately not to become a headline. He carried a slim data slate across the chamber, following the path marked by floating sigils only he could see through his lens implant. The instructions were simple. Deliver the slate to Ambassador Velix of the Thren Dominion, then exit through Corridor Delta 9. But nothing about the central ring of the chamber felt simple. The ring rotated slowly, revealing windows into raw space. Stars smeared into ribbons of silver. Massive vessels glided past like patient leviathans. Every step Rian took echoed far louder in his head than it ever did on the polished alloy floor. He reached the Thren platform, except the platform was empty. His lens flickered. The sigil pulsed red. Rian frowned. The Thren ambassador had checked in 20 minutes earlier. There was no chance the platform was unassigned. He stepped closer. That was when he noticed a chair. Not a Thren chair. No spines. No membrane cradle. This seat was different. Smooth, obsidian black, shaped almost like a human throne. Wide arms, high back, faintly glowing glyphs etched into its surface. He stopped walking. The slate vibrated in his hand, recalculating. His implant tried to reroute him, but the system lagged, overwhelmed by the chamber's layered diplomatic firewalls. Behind him, the door sealed. A ripple of attention passed through the room. Not loud, not obvious, but Rian felt it like cold rain. Someone, somewhere in this impossible room, had noticed him. He took a step back. The chair pulsed. Then the lighting changed. Across the chamber, every platform dimmed except the obsidian seat in front of him. It began to glow, not bright, but deep, as if absorbing the starlight pouring through the panoramic windows. A voice spoke. It did not travel through air. It arrived inside his skull. Human runner, you are lost. The words weren't translated. They were understood. Rian's mouth went dry. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. The voice continued, calm and impossibly intimate. You are carrying a message not meant for me. And yet, you are exactly where you must be. The chair unfolded. Segments shifted, blooming open like petals of black crystal. The glyphs brightened, resolving into patterns his implant could not identify. Every survival instinct he possessed screamed at him to run. His feet didn't move. Sit, the voice said. Rian did the stupidest thing of his life. He sat down. The chamber reacted like he had detonated a bomb. Delegates recoiled. Membranes flared. Bioluminescent crests snapped open in threat displays that overloaded his peripheral vision. Translation drones spun up so fast they whined in protest. He felt the data slate slip from his fingers and clatter uselessly to the floor. And then, something warm closed around his hand. He looked down. A hand held his. It wasn't human. Longer fingers. Skin like polished moonstone threaded with faint, drifting constellations of light. The grip was gentle but unyielding. The voice softened. Do not rise, it said. Stay here. Every diplomatic database in Rian's implant lit up at once. Alert, Royal Biosignature confirmed. Alert, High Sovereign Entity. Alert, Identity Lock, Queen of the Veil Clades. He had just taken the Queen's seat, and she was holding his hand. Hold on, before we get into the real stuff. I want to know, what are you doing at this exact moment while hearing my voice? I love seeing your answers down below in the comments. Across the chamber, Human Ambassador Kessler went pale. Her lips formed Rian's name. The Queen's grip tightened, just slightly, and inside Rian's mind, her next words were not meant for anyone else in the room. You are the first human I have ever touched, and now that I have, the war may finally be stopped. The chamber did not erupt. It froze. Silence thickened until it felt like gravity itself had been turned up a notch. Every ambassador, every hovering interpreter sphere, every living emblem and ceremonial guard locked into place like statues carved from different nightmares. Rian Holt sat in the Queen's chair with alien royalty's fingers wrapped around his own, and his brain simply stopped trying to make sense of reality. The Queen of the Veil Clades turned her head toward him. Her face was not symmetrical in the way humans preferred. Beauty, he realized, was a cultural lie. Her features were arranged for function, not comfort. Eyes set wide to perceive overlapping spectra, a subtle crown of luminous filaments drifting above her scalp like ghostly hair. When she focused on him, the room's ambient light bent slightly toward her, as if reality leaned in to listen. You are trembling, she said inside his mind. Rian tried to pull his hand away. It did not move. I'm not authorized, he began aloud, and immediately wished he hadn't. His voice cracked across the vast chamber, a fragile human noise in a room designed to absorb the sound of war. The Queen's thumb brushed across his knuckles. The touch was electric, not painful. Awakening. Authorization, she replied, is a concept invented by those who fear consequence. A tremor rippled across the platforms. The Thrin delegation unfurled their obsidian wings in a sign that meant both outrage and preemptive mourning. The crystalline Cerati envoy began emitting stress harmonics that rattled the ceiling plates. Somewhere far above, automated security grids adjusted their targeting matrices. Human Ambassador Kessler finally found her voice. Your Majesty, she said carefully. The human delegate occupying your proximity is a courier, not a negotiator. He is not. Not dangerous? The Queen finished for her. Kessler hesitated. The Queen's luminous filaments flared, painting soft spirals of light across the air. That assumption, she said, is precisely why your species survives. Rian felt something brush the back of his mind. Not an invasion, an invitation. Images poured through him. Worlds burning. Star systems folding inward like dying flowers. Vast fleets reduced to drifting debris by weapons that tore through probability instead of armor. He gasped, the visions colliding with memories of Earth. Rain on pavement, his sister's laugh. The smell of cheap coffee at the orbital shuttle port. The Queen withdrew, just enough for him to breathe. You carry hope in places you do not know exist, she said. It leaks from you like radiation. I don't, Rian whispered. I just deliver files. A ripple of something like amusement brushed his consciousness. You deliver your species. A new alert flashed inside his implant. Royal neural contact, non-hostile. Risk assessment, undefined. Recommendation, do not panic. Great advice, he thought hysterically. The Queen turned her attention back to the chamber. Her voice this time carried through translators, filling the vast hall. The war with the Veil Clades has consumed 14 stellar regions, she said. Your fleets burn our children's skies. Our weapons unravel your history, and yet neither side can remember why the first shot was fired. A murmur swept the platforms. She gestured, still holding Rian's hand, and a holographic projection bloomed above them. It showed two civilizations on the brink of extinction, mirrored in their desperation. Human colonies evaporated by singularity lances. Veil habitats collapsed into silent ash. This human, she continued, did not come here with weapons. He did not come with demands. He came with fear in his bones and loyalty in his pulse. Her gaze flicked down to Rian. You feel small, she told him privately. That is your strength. He swallowed. I'm really just trying not to pass out. Her grip softened. Then listen. Another vision unfolded, but this one was not destruction. It was ancient, a memory from before the Clades learned to hide between dimensions. It showed their first encounter with humanity, a forgotten skirmish on a nameless moon, a frightened human patrol misinterpreting a Veil Scout's emergence as an attack. One terrified human pulled a trigger. One dying clade screamed through subspace, and an entire species learned to hate a face it never understood. The queen let the memory fade. You did not start the war, she said gently, but you are not poisoned by its history. Rian felt tears blur his vision. He had never known about that moon. No one had. So what am I supposed to do? He asked. I can't undo centuries. No, she replied, but you can sit. The absurdity almost made him laugh. Her filaments dimmed, drawing the chamber back from the brink. For one cycle, she declared to all, this human will remain at my side. He will speak for no one. He will argue nothing. He will simply exist where your hatred cannot. The Cerati stopped vibrating. The Thren folded their wings. Ambassador Kessler stared at Rian as if he had just been drafted into mythology. The queen leaned closer. Her voice returned to the quiet space behind his eyes. If you rise before I release you, she said. The old story continues. If you stay, everything changes. And Rian suddenly understood that the hardest part was not surviving this moment. It was staying seated when the entire galaxy wanted him gone. The human security detail tried to move in. They did not make it 3 steps. A lattice of translucent geometry unfurled between the queen's platform and the rest of the chamber, bending light into a shimmering curtain. It was not a shield in any conventional sense. It was an assertion. Reality itself had been told, very politely, to remain where it was. Rian felt the pressure change, not on his skin, but on his thoughts, as if the air around his mind had thickened. Please don't let them shoot me, he whispered. The queen's reply was immediate. They cannot. Their weapons would need permission from the future. He had no idea what that meant, but it sounded final. Beyond the curtain, Ambassador Kessler raised a hand, signaling the human guards to stand down. Her face was carefully neutral, the mask of someone whose entire career was being disassembled in real time. Your Majesty, she said, this individual has not been trained for prolonged royal interface. There may be neurological consequences. There will be, the queen agreed. For everyone. She shifted in her seat, and Rian felt the obsidian surface subtly reconfigure to his posture, adjusting micropressures along his spine. He realized, dimly, that the throne was reading him. Heart rate, hormonal stress markers, neural oscillations. You're being analyzed, she told him. Do not resist. It dislikes fear. That's unfortunate, he said. Fear is kind of my default setting. A soft warmth flowed up his arm from where their hands were joined, steadying his pulse. He had the strange sensation that something immense was crouched behind his ribs, watching the room through his eyes. The queen addressed the council again. Long ago, she said, my people learned that war does not begin with weapons. It begins with stories. The first story your species told about mine was that we were monsters emerging from nothing. A new projection shimmered into being. Human archives, declassified fragments of early exploration logs, grainy helmet footage, static-choked audio of a terrified voice shouting about shadows in the void. Rian recognized the insignia on the armor. It was pre-alliance, before humanity even had a unified fleet. That soldier, the queen said quietly, was not lying. He saw something he could not understand, and so he named it enemy. The footage froze on a single frame, a blur of impossible angles where a Veil scout had been caught halfway between dimensions. Rian felt the queen's grip tighten, not with fear, but with grief. Every human child is taught that monsters live in the dark, she said. Every clade child is taught that humans kill what they do not name. The lattice between them and the council pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. You, she continued, nodding toward Rian, are not a story yet. A murmur spread, this time not of outrage, but of something dangerously close to hope. Rian leaned closer, keeping his voice low. I don't think I can be what you want. I'm not brave. I was terrified to come into this room. Her eyes softened. Bravery is what fear looks like when it refuses to leave. The throne shifted again, and a new cascade of data poured into his awareness. Not images, but feelings. Loneliness the size of galaxies. The weight of command across millennia. the exhaustion of ruling a species that had been born into a war it could not remember starting. "You think I hold your hand because it is symbolic," she said. "I do it because your nervous system is loud. It reminds me that life still hurts." Across the chamber, the Cerati envoy floated forward, stopping just shy of the reality lattice. "This proceeding violates 312 articles of the Concordance," it chimed. "Then the Concordance should consider rewriting itself," the Queen replied. The Thran ambassador clicked his mandibles in agitation. "If this human is harmed—" "He will not be," she interrupted. "If he is lost, all of you are." Rian felt suddenly, terribly visible. "What happens after this cycle?" he asked. "You said one cycle." The Queen did not answer immediately. Instead, she released his hand. The loss of contact was like stepping off a cliff. He swayed, heart racing, every nerve screaming at the sudden absence. Before he could panic, the throne compensated, tightening its embrace around his body. Her voice returned, softer than before. "After this cycle," she said, "the Veil Clades will either accept humanity as more than its oldest mistake, or we will disappear." "Disappear how?" he asked. She looked at him then, truly looked, with the full, ancient weight of a queen who had buried entire star systems. "We will fold ourselves into the dark between dimensions," she said, "and take the war with us. Your species will wake one day to peace and never know what price was paid." The projection above them shifted again, this time showing a map of space where entire regions blinked out, replaced by emptiness. Rian's throat closed. "You're going to erase yourselves," he said. "We are tired," she replied, "and you are the last variable we have not tested." She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper only he could hear. "If I ask you to stand when this cycle ends," she said, "I will be asking you to let my people die." The chamber lights dimmed, signaling the beginning of the formal negotiation window, and Rian realized with chilling clarity that staying seated might save a species, but standing up might save two. The negotiation cycle began with a sound like the universe taking a breath. A low resonance rolled through the chamber, not heard so much as felt, vibrating along Rian's bones until his teeth buzzed. Holographic time markers flared into existence around the central ring, counting down a window of exactly 100 standard minutes. That was how long the galaxy would tolerate him sitting in a queen's throne. The first to speak was not human. A towering silhouette detached itself from the ammonia mist platform of the car enclave. The being's body was a column of translucent muscle fibers, braided around a core of slow-burning plasma. Its voice came through layer translators, each syllable stacked like chords. "This human is an anomaly," it declared. "An error in diplomatic procedure." Rian swallowed. "I'm really good at being an error," he muttered. The Queen heard him anyway. "You are not an error," she replied. "You are the remainder when certainty is subtracted." The car envoy's plasma core flared brighter. "We have lost 12 colonies to your war, Veil Queen. If this creature is your instrument, then show us how it ends the bleeding." The Queen inclined her head. "By reminding you that humans bleed too." She gestured subtly toward Rian. His implant seized control of the chamber projection. Before he could protest, his own memories flooded the space. Childhood on the flooded terraces of New Jakarta Orbital. Emergency drills practiced so often they felt like lullabies. The night his sister had been evacuated when a pirate strike clipped the habitat's oxygen ring. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Rian hadn't known those files were even accessible. "You see numbers," the Queen said to the assembly. "He sees faces." The projection shifted again, now overlaying Veil Clade data. Hatcheries lost to human bombardment. Entire bloodlines archived as extinct. The symmetry was unbearable. The Cerati envoy pulsed uncertainly. "Why this human? Your Majesty could have summoned any diplomat." "I could not," the Queen replied. "Diplomats speak in layers. I needed someone who thinks in singularities." Rian leaned forward. "I don't think in singularities. I think in whether the coffee machine on Deck 9 is broken again." A faint ripple of laughter, real laughter, moved through the human delegation. The sound was fragile but alive. The Queen's filaments glowed in what he was beginning to recognize as pleasure. Exactly. The lattice barrier thinned, not in strength, but in intent. It no longer felt like a wall. It felt like a doorway that had not yet decided which side it opened to. Ambassador Kessler finally approached, stopping just short of the throne's reach. "Rian," she said softly, abandoning titles. "If there's anything you want me to say, anything you want me to carry for you, now is the time." The weight of that offer almost crushed him. He looked up at the Queen. "You said I shouldn't speak for anyone." "You should not argue," she corrected. "You may witness." So Rian did the only thing he could think of. He turned back to the chamber and spoke, not as a representative of Earth, but as a courier who had spent his life running messages between people who never saw each other. "When I deliver a slate," he said, voice shaking, "it's usually because someone's too important to walk down the hall themselves. But the message always gets there because someone small carries it." The car envoy tilted its blazing core. "You believe smallness is power?" "No," Rian replied. "I believe it's unavoidable. None of us are as big as we pretend." The Queen watched him as if he were rewriting physics. The countdown markers ticked down. 80 minutes remaining. The Thran ambassador shifted, mandibles clicking in reluctant curiosity. "What does your species want, human?" Rian hesitated. Then he surprised himself. "To stop running." The words felt heavier than any treaty clause. "I don't want to be a mistake you correct or a symbol you retire," he continued. "I just want to go home without thinking that something I never even knew about is burning because I exist." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the Queen stood. The chamber shuddered as the obsidian throne unfolded into a taller, more intricate structure, lifting her several meters above the floor. Rian remained seated, suddenly aware of how exposed he was without her hand anchoring him. She raised her arms, and the lattice barrier dissolved into motes of light that rained gently across the council. "You have all lost children to a war whose first story was a lie," she said. "This human has lost nothing today, and yet he carries more grief than any of you have permitted yourselves to feel." She turned to Rian and extended her hand again. "Come closer," she said. Every warning in his body screamed. He stood. The countdown markers flared crimson. Across the chamber, defense grids spun to life. Reality itself seemed to recoil, as if history were snapping back into its old shape. Rian took one step toward her. The Queen's eyes widened, not in anger, but in shock. "You were not supposed to do that," she whispered. "What happens now?" he asked. The answer came not from her, but from the chamber itself. A new alert flooded every system, every translator, every mind. Veil Clades emergency protocol, dissolution sequence initiated. Time to event horizon, 79 minutes. Rian stared at the timer. "I think I just started the end of the war," he said faintly. "And I fear," the Queen replied, taking his hand once more, "you may have also started the end of my people." The words dissolution sequence initiated echoed through the chamber in a dozen spectral languages, each more chilling than the last. 79 minutes. That was how long an ancient species had decided it was willing to keep existing. Rian stood beside the Queen, their hands linked again, feeling the subtle vibration of the throne, as if it were a living heart preparing to stop. He could sense something vast shifting beneath reality. Not an explosion, not an evacuation, but a folding. Like the universe itself was learning how to hold its breath. The human delegation erupted. Ambassador Kessler spun toward her security team, issuing rapid instructions that Rian's implant flagged as mostly useless. There was nothing in any concordance manual about talking an entire civilization out of non-existence. "Your Majesty," the Cerity envoy chimed urgently, "you cannot simply remove your species from the galactic record. The ecological repercussions alone are preferable to extinction by attrition," the Queen replied. The car envoy's plasma core dimmed, its voice losing some of its resonance. "If the Veil Clades withdraw, the balance of power collapses. Systems held in check by fear will fracture. Then they will learn to hold themselves together," she said. Rian tightened his grip on her hand. "You said standing might save 2 species." "Yes, and sitting might save 1. Her filaments drifted, troubled constellations. I did not anticipate you would stand so quickly. I didn't anticipate you'd start deleting yourselves. He shot back, surprising both of them. The countdown flared again. 74 minutes. A new sensation bloomed in Rian's mind, not an image, but a corridor of possibilities opening all at once. He realized the Queen was not merely present. She was networked, her consciousness entangled with every Veil Clade node scattered across folded space. She was already leaving. "You're doing this because of me," he said. "No," she corrected gently. "I am doing this because of centuries of calculus. You are simply the final variable." Rian turned toward the chamber. "Is nobody else hearing how insane this is?" The Thran ambassador flexed his wings uneasily. "If her people vanish, the treaties die with them. The wars become history with no witnesses." "That's not peace," Rian said. "That's erasing the crime scene." The Queen studied him, something like wonder in her alien eyes. "Your species insists on accountability even when it hurts." "We're terrible at it," he admitted, "but we don't give up on the idea." The projection above them flickered, revealing a visualization of the Veil Clades' dissolution, star-sized probability fields collapsing inward, entire habitats sliding into a dimensionless refuge that would never intersect with normal space again. A door with no handle. Ambassador Kessler stepped closer, her voice shaking. "Your Majesty, if there is any condition under which you would halt this sequence, name it." The Queen hesitated. The timer ticked down. 68 minutes. Rian felt the throne hum under his palm. Not with readiness. With mourning. "What if I don't move again?" he asked suddenly. Everyone turned toward him. The Queen's grip tightened. "Explain." "You said standing could doom your people," he said. "So I'll sit. Right here. For the rest of the cycle. For as long as it takes." Her filaments flared in alarm. "That is not a solution. That is a gesture." "So is disappearing," he replied. "At least this way. We're still here to argue about it." Silence. Not the brittle diplomatic silence of protocol, but the kind that comes when something fragile is deciding whether to live. The Queen searched his face. He had the sudden, overwhelming feeling that she was not just looking at him. She was seeing through every human who had ever been afraid and chosen to keep going anyway. "If you remain," she said slowly, "the Concordance will attempt to claim you, to turn you into precedent." "Let them," Rian said. "I was never supposed to be memorable." The Serity envoy emitted a harmonic that translators struggled to classify. Awe, dread, curiosity. The countdown hesitated, not stopped, but slowed. 70 minutes became 71. A ripple of astonishment swept the chamber. The Queen gasped softly. "You are interfering with the sequence." Rian felt it too, a strange resistance in the air, as if the future were suddenly heavier. "What's happening?" he asked. "You are entangled with my withdrawal," she said. "Your refusal to choose absence is confusing our calculus." "That's good, right?" "For us," she replied. "Confusion is sacred. It is where evolution hides." She closed her eyes, filaments dimming, and the projection wavered. Entire regions of the dissolution map flickered uncertainly, their outlines blurring. Ambassador Kessler whispered, "Rian, whatever you're doing, keep doing it." He swallowed. "I don't even know what I'm doing." The Queen reopened her eyes, and for the first time, he saw fear there. "Neither do I," she said. "And that is why, human courier, you may have just saved my species." The timer chimed. 69 minutes remaining. But now, it was counting up as well as down. Time broke first. Not shattered. Bent. The chamber's chronometers began to stutter, their pristine countdown arcs smearing into jagged spirals that overlapped like reflections in warped glass. 69 minutes remained, and yet Rian could feel the moment stretching, thick as honey, refusing to flow in the direction everyone expected. The Queen swayed. Rian caught her instinctively, the throne flexing to support both of them as her connection to the Veil Clades network wavered. A soft cascade of unreadable glyphs spilled across the projection, diagnostic code screaming in alien mathematics. "What's happening to you?" he asked. She steadied herself against him, her filaments dimmed to embers. My people have never been anchored to an external will before. I'm not trying to control you, he said quickly. I know, she replied. That is the problem. Across the chamber, the Serity envoy pulsed with a rapid, uneven rhythm. Your Majesty, your neural lattice is desynchronizing from your species' core. The Car envoy's plasma core flickered wildly. If the Queen loses coherence mid-withdrawal, the Veil Clades will scatter. There will be no refuge, only annihilation. Rian felt his stomach drop. So either way they die? The Queen managed a weak smile. Your species would call this a learning experience. Ambassador Kessler pushed forward again, all pretense gone. What do we do? The Queen looked at Rian. Tell me, she said softly, why your kind keeps choosing to exist when existence costs you everything. He stared at her. I don't think we ever choose it. I think we just don't notice when we're choosing anything else. The throne pulsed, as if acknowledging the answer. She closed her eyes, and this time she did not flood him with visions of war. Instead, she let him feel her people, not as rulers or enemies, but as families, as minds born in drifting nurseries between dimensions, as children who learn to fold space the way human children learn to walk. Her voice trembled inside his thoughts. We were not always warriors. We were explorers who learned too late that appearing from nowhere is indistinguishable from attack. Rian tightened his grip on her hand. Then stay. Long enough to let us learn the difference. The chamber's alarm softened, their sharp edges blunting into uncertain murmurs. The dissolution projection dimmed another fraction. Whole clusters of the Veil Clades retreat zones fading back into stable coordinates. The timer flickered. 69 minutes remaining. 69 minutes remaining. It had stopped changing. A concordance legal drone finally dared to drift forward, its tone calibrated to soothing authority. Emergency protocol review initiated. The human courier appears to be acting as a quantum stabilizer for the Veil Clades withdrawal field. Rian blinked. What now? The Queen exhaled, long and unsteady. You are a contradiction that refuses to resolve. My species cannot calculate you away. The Car envoy rumbled. Then perhaps the calculation itself is the enemy. The words hung there, heavier than any weapon. Ambassador Kessler straightened, something resolute settling into her posture. Your Majesty, if humanity were to formally recognize the Veil Clades as a sovereign civilization rather than a hostile anomaly. Recognition is a story, the Queen said. Stories can be rewritten. Rian felt a tremor run through the throne. Not instability this time. Alignment. Then let me be the footnote, he said. The awkward part nobody can ignore. A ripple of reluctant amusement moved through the non-human delegations. Even the Serity emitted a harmonic that translators tagged as cautious approval. The Queen leaned her forehead against his. The contact sent a cascade of warmth through his skull, not invasive, but intimate. You are not small anymore, she whispered. Not to me. He laughed weakly. Please don't tell my mother. She still thinks I work in inventory. The projection above them shifted again, this time revealing branching futures rather than retreat vectors. Some were dark. Many were uncertain. A few, just a few, glowed with fragile possibility. The concordance drone chimed. New variable detected. Probability of Veil Clade dissolution reduced by 32%. A collective breath moved the room. The Queen opened her eyes, luminous and exhausted. If we halt the sequence, she said, the war does not end. It simply becomes honest. Honest sounds survivable, Rian replied. She straightened slowly, regaining some of her regal bearing. Then I will not withdraw today. The chamber erupted, not in chaos, but in voices layered with relief, fear, and something dangerously like optimism. The timer dissolved entirely, replaced by a simple symbol pulsing above the throne, an unfinished equation. Rian sagged in the Queen's grasp. So what happens to me now? She looked down at him with an expression that held both gratitude and sorrow. Now, she said, you belong to a story too large for anyone to own. Security systems powered down. Reality, cautiously, resumed behaving like itself. But Rian could still feel the echo of bent time in his bones. and he had the sinking suspicion that this was not the end of the crisis. It was only the moment the universe noticed him. The first thing Rian noticed when the alarms faded was the sound of breathing. Not his own. The room's. Dozens of alien respiratory systems, from methane lungs to vibrating plasma sacs, filled the chamber with a low, living chorus. It was the sound of a galaxy realizing it had not died today. The Queen still held his hand. She had not yet released him, and he was no longer certain which of them needed the contact more. Across the chamber, Concordance mediators poured in, their sleek drones unfolding legal holofields that attempted to retrofit centuries of precedent around a single, deeply inconvenient human being. Ambassador Kessler leaned close. "You are officially listed as anomalous stabilizing asset," she murmured. "I'm sorry. That's worse than being dead," Rian replied. The Queen heard them. "It is also permanent." Rian winced. "I really like being a courier." "You still are," she said. "You simply deliver heavier messages now." The Cerati envoy drifted closer, its crystalline facets refracting Rian's reflection into 1,000 uncertain fragments. "Human," it chimed. "Our analysts are attempting to quantify your effect on the Veil Clade cognitive lattice. Your presence generates unpredictable coherence patterns." "I get that a lot on performance reviews," he said. A ripple of something that might have been laughter shimmered through its body. But the Queen's attention had shifted inward again. He felt the pressure in his skull return, lighter than before but threaded with urgency. "My people are frightened," she told him. "Not of you. Of the absence of certainty you represent." "Good," he said without thinking. "Certainty is what got us here." Her filaments dimmed in contemplation. "You speak like one who has been burned by faith." "I've been burned by instructions," he replied. "They never mention what to do when the rules stop making sense." The Concordance legal drone interrupted. Preliminary accord drafted. It recognizes the Veil Clades as co-equal sentient stakeholders and establishes a joint observational council to replace hostile engagement protocols. The car envoy's plasma core brightened. "You would dismantle deterrent structures that have stabilized this region for centuries." "Stabilized is not the same as healed," Ambassador Kessler said. Rian felt the Queen's grip tighten again. "They are trying to translate you into policy," she whispered. "I don't fit in a spreadsheet," he muttered. She turned to the assembly. "If you reduce this to clauses and countersigns, you will lose what you have almost understood. This human is not a tool. He is a wound you refuse to close." Silence fell again, but this time it was not afraid. It was listening. The Thran ambassador folded his wings in a rare gesture of humility. "Then what do you ask of us, Veil Queen?" Her eyes flicked to Rian. He swallowed. "No pressure, right?" She waited. He took a breath that felt too large for his lungs. "I ask you to meet. Not negotiate. Meet. Without fleets in the background. Without weapons in your databases. Just sit with each other." The Cerati chimed softly. "That is not how peace is made." "It is how it starts," Rian replied. The Queen released his hand at last. The absence still hurt, but this time it didn't feel like falling. "Let the human speak," she said. The Concordance drones hesitated, then retracted their holofields. Rian stepped forward, away from the throne that had cradled him through the near death of a species. The floor felt different under his feet now, as if it remembered him. "I don't know how to fix what you've broken," he said to the room. "I barely know how to fix a cracked screen, but I've spent my whole life carrying things that didn't belong to me, so they could end up where they were needed." He looked from platform to platform, meeting eyes that did not share human pupils, human fears, or human biology, but that all shared something like exhaustion. "So I'll keep carrying this," he said. "The fact that you almost gave up, the fact that you didn't." A soft murmur spread, not of approval, but recognition. The Queen watched him with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "You are teaching them vulnerability," she said privately. "They will resist it." "Then I'll teach it louder," he replied. For the first time since he had entered the chamber, Rian felt something like control, not over events, but over his own place in them. Then the floor shuddered, not violently, like a distant thunder passing through steel. The Concordance drone's voice sharpened. Alert! Unregistered quantum signatures detected beyond the station perimeter. The projection wall flared, revealing a pattern Rian had never seen. A swarm of distortions in space that were not Veil Clade folds, not human warp wakes, but something raw and hungry, pressing against the boundary of mapped reality. The Queen's filaments flared in alarm. They followed the weakening of our withdrawal field, she said. Who? Rian asked. She looked at the display, fear finally unmasked. The ones who taught us how to disappear, she said, and who never meant for us to come back. The distortions on the projection wall did not move. They waited. Each anomaly was a wound in space, edges feathered like torn paper drifting in water. No ships, no energy signatures that any sensor suite could classify, just absence shaped into teeth. Rian felt a pressure behind his eyes that had nothing to do with the Queen this time. What are they? He asked. The Queen's voice was barely more than breath. We called them the architects. They taught us to fold into the dark between moments. We believed they were guides. The car in voice plasma core dimmed to a frightened ember. Your Majesty, those signatures are predatory. They are not observing. They are tasting. The Concordance drone swarmed, projecting emergency overlays that failed to settle into anything coherent. Threat assessment impossible. One chimed. Entities do not occupy conventional spacetime. Rian stared at the screen. The distortions pulsed in a rhythm that made his skin crawl. Not a heartbeat. A hunger. They noticed when your people almost vanished, he said slowly. Like sharks feeling blood. The Queen nodded once. Our dissolution field masked us from them for millennia. When it faltered, it was like lighting a beacon in a dark ocean. Across the chamber, defensive platforms powered up, but the targeting grid spun uselessly, unable to lock onto what had no defined location. Ambassador Kessler turned to Rian, eyes wide. Can you do whatever you did before? I don't even know what I did before, he replied. The Queen reached for his hand again. This time, he met her halfway. The contact was different now, heavier, threaded with something alien and cold. He could feel the architects at the edges of his perception, brushing against the Veil Clades' folded spaces like fingers testing a locked door. They are not interested in war, the Queen said. They are interested in endings. A new projection bloomed, this one not generated by any system in the chamber. It was raw, unfiltered perception, a view of the architects from the inside of folded space. Rian recoiled. They were not beings. They were processes. Vast, self-correcting erasures that consumed civilizations the way entropy consumed heat. Where they passed, possibility thinned to zero. They harvest universes that grow too loud. The Queen whispered. We were meant to vanish quietly, to become an elegant subtraction. And now? Rian asked. Now, she replied. We have invited them to a conversation they do not want to have. The distortions began to move. Not toward the station, but around it, forming a loose ring of nothingness that bent the stars into sick curves. The Axiom spire groaned, its structural field screaming in silent protest. The Cerity envoy pulsed in rising panic. We cannot fight in absence. Rian's implant chimed with a priority message he had never seen before. System override, courier interface unlocked. What is that? Ambassador Kessler demanded. Rian blinked as new sensory layers unfolded inside his mind. The station's relay nodes, the Concordance's ancient failsafes, the Queen's neural lattice. They were all suddenly readable. They're using me like a router, he said faintly. The Queen met his gaze. You are bridging systems that were never meant to speak. Outside the windows, one of the distortions peeled open. Not a tear, a choice. A portion of the chamber vanished. Not destroyed, not displaced, simply removed. The space where it had been was now a flat, colorless void that swallowed light. Screams rippled through the room. Rian felt the Queen's hand convulse in his. They are editing us, she said, one paragraph at a time. The Concordance drones blared evacuation protocols that no one could execute. Where did you flee when the map itself was being erased? Rian closed his eyes. Not in prayer. In stubbornness. What do you do when a story is being deleted? He asked quietly. The queen did not answer. He opened his eyes and looked at the unfinished equation, still hovering above the throne. The symbol of uncertainty he had accidentally made sacred. He reached for it. Not physically. Conceptually. The courier interface in his implant flared, pulling in streams of impossible data. Veil Clade fold algorithms, human probability models, Cerity harmonic stabilizers, everything the Concordance had ever built to prevent reality from unraveling. Rian, Ambassador Kessler said, voice breaking. Whatever you're thinking is probably wrong, he finished, but I've carried wrong things my whole life. The distortions tightened their ring. Another section of the chamber vanished, taking with it an entire delegation platform. The queen pressed her forehead to his. If you anchor to me now, she said, you will feel what extinction feels like. Then you won't have to feel it alone, he replied. He reached deeper into the equation, refusing to solve it. Instead, he left it open, and the architects finally noticed him. The moment the architects noticed Rian, the universe developed a headache. Not pain. Dissonance. Every surface in the chamber acquired a faint double image, as if reality were hesitating over which version of itself it preferred. Sound fractured into overlapping echoes. Even the queen's presence in his mind blurred. Her once coherent consciousness stretched thin across too many impossible angles. They are addressing you, she said, voice splintering. Rian felt it then, a pressure without weight, a question that was not phrased in language, but in inevitability. Why are you loud? The thought did not belong to any mind he could recognize. It was a correction algorithm trying to debug existence. I don't know how to be quiet, he whispered. The distortions outside the station pulsed in response, their edges sharpening. The void they left behind was not empty. It was finished. The courier interface in his implant blazed, no longer translating but exposing. He saw the architects as the queen had once seen them, not as enemies, but as maintenance routines for a universe that had outgrown its design parameters. They did not hate life. They trimmed it. The queen's grip weakened. They cannot understand defiance, she said. Only errors. Rian felt her slipping, her presence dissolving back into the fragmented lattice of her species. If she vanished now, the Veil Clades would follow her into folded oblivion, and the architects would complete their work unchallenged. He searched desperately for something human enough to matter to a process that ate futures, and he found it in the worst place. Himself. I'm not a variable, he said aloud, voice cracking through the fractured acoustics. I'm noise. The thought echoed strangely, amplified by systems that no longer knew how to categorize him. The architects responded, not with words, with compression. The ring of distortions contracted, folding inward toward the throne. The axiom spire screamed as its structural fields collapsed in layers, entire decks evaporating into the featureless void. Ambassador Kessler shouted his name, but her voice arrived half a second late, then again a half-second early. Rian grabbed the queen, pulling her fully against him as if physical proximity could stop metaphysical erasure. You taught me that stories start wars, he said to her, to the architects, to the empty space trying to finish the sentence of the universe. So here's mine. The unfinished equation above the throne flared, lines thickening into something almost legible. Not a solution, a refusal. The courier interface surged, not obeying any known protocol, rerouting the queen's entangled consciousness through Rian's own stubborn, linear, painfully human neural pathways. It hurt, not physically, existentially. He felt every Veil Clade mind brush against his own, their terror, their weariness, their fragile, impossible hope that maybe this time they would not have to disappear. The architects recoiled. Just a fraction. Noise, they seemed to realize, was not in their model. You can't finish me, Rian said, breath ragged. Because I don't know what I am yet. The compression faltered. The distortion stuttered, their edges losing coherence as the unfinished equation bled into their patterns, corrupting their clean, merciless calculus. The queen gasped, her filaments blazing back to life. You are entangling us with indeterminacy, she said in awe. They cannot process it. Rian laughed weakly. Then let's be confusing. The Cerati Envoy emitted a harmonic that shattered several hovering displays. The entities are destabilizing. The projection wall flickered, showing the ring of distortions unraveling, their perfect absences fraying into irregular, imperfect gaps that no longer consumed, but hesitated. The architects pressed harder. A wave of erasure tore through the chamber, stopping centimeters from Rian's face. He could see the boundary of non-existence, like a mirror that reflected nothing. His knees buckled. The queen held him upright. "Rian," she said softly, and for the first time used his name with something like reverence. "If you continue, you will not be the same." He looked at her, at the chamber that had become a battlefield between stories and silence. "I wasn't much to begin with." He reached again into the unfinished equation, this time not to resist, but to invite. Every system, every species, every fractured mind in the room felt it. A call not to align, but to misalign together. A collective, stubborn refusal to be cleanly resolved. Human fear. Veil Clades sorrow. Cerati resonance. Car plasma rhythms. Noise. The architects convulsed. Their distortions tore open into ragged holes that leaked probability instead of devouring it. The void they had carved began to refill, not with matter, but with potential. For the first time, Rian sensed something like surprise ripple through the process that had never needed it before. And then, impossibly, it hesitated. The queen sagged against him, drained but alive. "They are recalculating," she whispered. "We have never made them do that." Rian stared at the broken ring of distortions, every nerve screaming. Then maybe they're learning. The chamber lights flared back to full intensity as reality snapped, bruised but intact, into a single timeline. The architects did not retreat. They watched. The architects did not leave. They simply stopped erasing. The distortions around the axiom spire loosened, no longer biting into space, but hovering like unanswered questions. The void scars in the chamber did not heal, yet they no longer spread. Reality was bruised, exhausted, but, for the first time, unafraid. Rian Holt was on his knees, barely aware of how he had gotten there. The queen knelt with him, one arm wrapped around his shoulders, her filaments dim but steady, glowing like embers that refused to go out. For a long moment neither of them spoke. The chamber held its breath, waiting to see whether the universe would finish its sentence. It did not. Concordance drones began cautiously rebooting dormant systems. Structural fields reasserted themselves around the wounds left by the architects, scaffolding absence with stubborn geometry. The projection steadied, resolving into a single, impossible sight. The architects were incomplete. Their distortions were still there, but they no longer formed a closed ring. They wavered, their edges smudged by the unfinished equation, still pulsing faintly above the throne. Ambassador Kessler approached slowly, as if afraid sound itself might shatter the fragile equilibrium. "Rian," she said, voice raw. "What did you do?" He laughed once, a dry, disbelieving sound. "I broke their expectations. Apparently that's illegal in most universes." The queen rested her forehead against his. "You made us loud," she said. "Not with weapons. With being." Across the chamber, delegations that had once glared at each other and practiced hostility now stared at the same impossible sight. Not an enemy, not a savior, but a reminder that even the forces that shaped existence could be confused. The Cerati Envoy pulsed softly. The entities have ceased their corrective function. They are observing. The Car Envoy's plasma core brightened with something like cautious wonder. "Then the war is over." The queen shook her head. "No. The war has finally begun in earnest." Rian looked up at her, startled. "That doesn't sound like a win." "It is," she replied, eyes luminous. "Before today, our conflict was a spiral toward disappearance. Now it is a dialogue with the universe itself." She helped him to his feet. His legs trembled, but they held. "You asked what would happen to you," she said. "This is the answer." The unfinished equation above the throne shifted, its lines settling into a new configuration. Not a solution, but a signature. The concordance drone chimed, its voice uncharacteristically awed. Entity designation update. Human courier Rian Holt is hereby recorded as a trans-species stabilizing narrative constant. Rian blinked. That is absolutely going on my resignation letter. A ripple of weary laughter moved the room. Human, alien, mechanical. All imperfectly synchronized. All undeniably real. The Queen released him at last. This time, the loss did not feel like falling. It felt like being trusted to stand alone. My people will not withdraw, she said to the assembly. We will remain, wounded and visible. And this human will not be my symbol. He will be my witness. Rian met her gaze. I didn't sign up for that. She smiled, a fragile, radiant thing. No one ever does. The projection wall shifted one final time, displaying not war zones or distortions, but a live feed of the architects, still there, still vast, still dangerous, yet now threaded with irregularities that mirrored the chaotic patterns of living minds. They are learning to account for noise, the Cerity envoy said. For stories. Rian exhaled shakily. Great. Now we're training the universe. Ambassador Kessler stepped beside him. You saved more than one species today. I just refuse to go away, he replied. And sometimes, the Queen added softly, that is the bravest act of all. Silence settled, not the brittle silence of fear, but the deep quiet of something new trying to take shape. The Concordance chair, a being of rotating light and ancient mandate, finally spoke. Let this cycle be recorded as the moment of persistence. Let it be taught that existence is not a calculation to be optimized, but a narrative to be carried. Rian closed his eyes for a second, letting the weight of it all crash over him. When he opened them, the Queen was already turning back to her people, the glow of her filaments strengthening as she reconnected to the Veil Clades' vast, fragile network. You are free to go, courier, she said over her shoulder. For now, he echoed. She paused. The universe has noticed you. It does not easily forget. Rian glanced at the scars on the chamber walls, the hovering remnants of forces that had tried to finish existence like an editing pass. Neither do I, he said, as security teams finally moved in to stabilize the station and the delegates began the long, careful work of rewriting the future. Rian took one last look at the unfinished equation above the throne. It was still there, not as a warning, as a promise. And if this story meant anything, it was that sometimes the smallest voice in the room was loud enough to make eternity hesitate. If you've stayed with the story until now, do me a favor. Like the video, share it with someone who loves science fiction, and subscribe to HFY Sound Scape so you never miss the next journey into humanity's stubborn brilliance.